In this video, I'll show you how to paint a battle sister for the Order of the Argent Shroud. Let's get started with this sister of battle from the Argent Shroud order. So I've undercoated or primed with black, and what I've done, I've just put some greys here over the top just to make it easier for when I do the robes, because the robes are a lot lighter. You can base coat this with lead belcher if you want. I just find this a little more difficult to then go back over and paint in the kind of non-metallic materials. So the base colour we're using for the armour is Grey Knight Steel. It's one of the new paints Games Workshop have released, and it's a nice metallic colour that's got a blue fleck in it as well. So work your way around. You may need to pop 2 coats on, but just take your time and make sure it's nice and thin. And then once we've kind of done that, worked our way around all the armour, we'll then go in and do the material. And the reason we do it that way around is because if you make any mistakes, i.e. the material goes over the armour, you can just go back and fix it. Whereas if you finish the armour, then, you know, it's a lot more difficult. So work your way around all the armour panels, get all this Grey Knight Steel down, and then we'll come back and we'll shade it, and then we'll start to highlight. Once that Iron Hands Grey Knight Steel has dried, we just want to shade it a little bit, and the colour we're going to use for that is Drakenhof Nightshade. Now it's really important that you don't get too much of it on your brush, because we don't want to pool it over the armour. We just want it to give the armour a nice blue tint and drop into all the kind of recesses there. So you can see I've not got very much on my brush at all. As I'm kind of moving around the model, I've got even less on my brush as it's kind of been used up. So work your way all the way around with the Drakenhof Nightshade all over the Grey Knight Steel. I always get my paint names wrong. I've been painting too long. I keep calling them by the old name sometimes as well. So apologies for that. So I'm just going to finish the leg here on cam, and then off cam I'm going to go off and we're going to have a look at the backpack and the shoulder pads there as well. So I'll go finish those off, and then we'll come back and we'll start the cloth work. The armour's got a really nice blue tint to it now, so let's work on the robes a little. So the outside is kind of like a cream colour, so I'm just taking Wraithbone, I'm just going to work it over the outside of the robes. Now, as you can see, it's not covering very well in one hit, so you're going to need to do 2 coats. You may need to do 3. Well, the Wraithbone covers quite well, so 2 coats should be fine on this. And the reason we do the light colour first is because it's a lot easier for the dark colour to go on. So we'll do the light colour, and then we'll do the dark colour after, which is going to be a red colour for the inside of the robe. So we'll probably start that off with Mephiston Red. So just work your way around, get all the robes done. Don't forget the sleeves as well. And we'll come back and we'll look to shade them, highlight them, and move on to the next part. Once you're happy that Wraithbone is dry, just take some Skeleton Horde contrast paint, and we're just going to paint this over all the bits we've just painted with Wraithbone. So be careful when you come to those bits of armour you've finished, but the bits you haven't finished, you can just be a little less careful. So just work your way around. This is a straightforward step. All you're doing is you're just kind of using Skeleton Horde. It's quite a warm colour, and it works really well for this kind of robe and for purity seals. And if you wonder where the model's head is, I'm doing this one bareheaded, so I've kept that off, and I'll do that painted separately. It's just a little easier. So I'm going to finish off just doing the big cloak on the back. So with this, you want to pull the contrast paints down to where you want the shadows to be. So you can see it starts to pool around the bottom. Just move it around, thin it out a little bit so that it's not too thick and you don't get really ugly tide marks. Because as it dries, it kind of pulls itself together a little bit. but you don't want it to be a big blotchy one like I've got in there. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to clean my brush, and I'm just going to move it through these areas, and that takes away all the kind of pooling. I learned this technique from a guy called Juan Hidalgo, so check out his channel as well. He's got a great series on using contrast paints. I'll put a link to it in the on the card on the top of the screen if you want to check that out after you finish watching my video, of course. So work your way around, take away all the pooling bits of contrast paint, and then when it's dry we'll come back in and we'll start to highlight it. Once that skeleton horde's dry, we'll go back in and start to reinstate some of the highlights. So I'm just using some shabby bone here, and this is good to just work around. Obviously leave the skeleton horde in some of the darkest recesses, but if it's got any, or if you've got any staining on the robes, then this is a good way to just work it out a little bit. So work your way around the rest of the model. I'm probably going to go in and tidy that up somehow as well, maybe just a little bit more skeleton horde along there, just so that I've got a nice deep crease and not just the pooling at the bottom. Don't forget you've got the front part here as well, so just take your time, work the shabby bone in, looking for the raised areas, and leaving the skeleton horde in the recesses. So I'm going to work around, finish off the kind of creases here, and we'll come back and just give it another highlight to make it pop. And then there's a final highlight for the robe. We're just going to go back to that wraithbone colour. This is quite a bit lighter than the shabby bone, but all we're looking to do is just, you know, where we've got a wide fold, we're just going to run the brush down it. We're just looking for a really thin highlight on the highest points of the robe. So just take your time, work your way around, and this will just make that robe have that, just make it pop a little bit against the other colours that we've got in there. So work your way around. When you're happy, just leave it, and then we'll move on to the next part where we'll do the inside of the robe, which is going to be red. So I'll finish off this and then we'll move forward with the model. For the inside of the cloak, we're going to get that red base down, and that's going to be Mephiston Red. So I'll just show you on the front here. Really simple. Work it in, take your time, be particularly careful when you come up against bits you've already finished, as I'm being there, and just work it in. Probably going to use more contrast paint than I normally would on this model, but that just makes the process a bit quicker, but it doesn't actually affect the final result, which is the main thing. So I'm just going to carry on putting the Mephiston Red around all the kind of visible parts of the inside of the cloak. Don't go wild. I mean, if you can't get the brush somewhere, then you can't get the brush somewhere, so don't force yourself to paint all the little bits of the inner side. Just get the bits that are most visible, and don't forget as well you've got the insides of the sleeves. So I'm going to finish off that, we'll come back, shade and highlight, and then we'll have a start to look at the metallics and the gun and the leather. When the Mephiston Red is dry, you just want to give it a little bit of shading. Now this isn't an all over shade, this is just kind of on the kind of panel lines. On the front here you've got the kind of the holes where the habit connects. You just got a little bit deep in there, you've got some depth in the sleeves. So this is Agrax Earth shade, and it's really just as simple as that really. So let that dry, we'll come back and then we'll highlight it. As I was working through, look at the artwork, I realised actually the gun casing is also red, so all I've done is I've based that Mephiston Red as well, and I've just given it a little bit of shading with the Agrax Earth shade. So let's highlight the robes. The first colour for this is Evil Sunz Scarlet, and all we're doing is we're just looking for those raised areas like that, a little bit in there, A little bit in there. You can edge highlight the gun. I think mine's still drying a little bit, so I might take some of the Agrax with me. That's okay. You can work it back in. So that's the first bit of highlight. And the second highlight is going to be with Wild Rider Red. And this needs to be a kind of much thinner highlight than the Evil Sunz Scarlet. So let me make sure you can see there. It's just gonna, within that Evil Sunz Scarlet highlight, just going to have a nice Wild Rider Red one popping in there. And that's a nice highlight. And then same on the casing for the weapon. Just brightens up some of those edges a little bit. So there we go, that's the red done. I'm going to work my way around, just check I haven't missed anything off. I might put a little bit of highlight underneath the holes there in the habit. So when we come back, we'll do the gold and the gun metallics. We'll base coat the gold first. So for this, we'll use Retributor armour. So we've got this little icon here under the holster of the weapon, which we can do. And we've got the beads, I guess, which holds it onto the wrist. And we've also got just a little different on this one. We've got the filigree, not filigree, just the kind of attachments and the ornamentation on the backpack, which we can do in gold as well. So work your way around. Any other bits that you think should be gold, get them done, colour them in. And then we'll have a look at doing the shading on this before we move across to the darker kind of metallics for the weapon. You can shade that Retributor armour with a bit of Reikland Flesh Shade, just to add some depth to it. Just take your time, be careful, working your way around, making sure that you only get it on the gold and you don't get it on the blue steel that you've got down for the silver armour. So we are, we'll do the darker silvers next, so I'll get that set up on the palette. That's going to be Iron Hand Steel, and then we'll shade that and we'll highlight the gold and the silver together. The darker silver is going to be the kind of the gun as well as the grenades, so make sure you get those done as well. And we've got some little clasp there. So like I said, this is Iron Hand Steel. It's a really nice silver. It's not quite as dark as Lead Belcher, but I do prefer it. So that done, so just make your way onto the weapon. Again, be careful you don't get it on any of the red casing you've already finished. And just work your way around. For the fleur-de-lis and the wings on the shoulder, they're actually going to be white, so once we've got the metallics done, we'll drop onto the fleur-de-lis. And I think the last thing we'll do is probably the leather and the pipe work, because we're going to use contrast paint for that, so it's nice and straightforward. So I'm going to finish off this darker metal, and we'll come back, we'll shade it, and then we'll highlight it. So to shade the darker metal, just take some Nuln Oil. And again, you don't want too much on your brush because you may accidentally get Nuln Oil over everything, which you don't want to do because it's great for shading metallics. It's an absolute pain for trying to fix mistakes with. So there we are, just work it around all the different metallic bits. Let that dry, and when we come back, we'll highlight both the silver and the gold. The highlight colour for the gold and for the silver is Chrome from Valeur Model Air. So all we're going to do is just kind of follow the edges, nice and simple. Same for the gold as well, just where we think light might spot. Take your time, work your way around. We will come back to this as the kind of the final highlight on the armour as well. But for now we just want to get the gold and the darker silver highlighted. So there we are. Let that dry and we'll have a look at doing the leather next. For the leather, I'm going to use black Templar contrast paint. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to paint this over all the pouches, and the straps and everything else that is leather. I was still going to highlight it later on, but it's interesting to try different things sometimes, and as the leather's black, I think the black Templar contrast gives us a nice quick way of getting what we want, a really good looking kind of leather without too much effort. When I talk about the leather, I also include the gloves as well, so make sure that you don't forget the gloves, and also do your best not to get it on any of the bits you've already painted. So I'm going to go away and finish using the black Templar contrast paint on all the leather, and then when we come back we'll have a look at how it settled, and if we need to we'll do a little bit of highlighting with it. Once that black Templar is dry, we'll give it a little highlight. So we're just going to use some Mechanica Standard Grey, and we're just going to highlight the kind of the highest, most raised parts. So we got the fingers on the hands, and we've got the edges there. Where we've got the leather, we can just use the shape of the model to draw the brush along the edge, which is nice and straightforward. We'll do the same with the kind of pistol casing on the back there. Like I said, that's really nice and straightforward, really quick way of doing black leather. So I'm just going to go back in now, pick up any other little bits off the kind of the gloves here, the tubing. So there we are, that's that all nice and highlighted. So the model's starting to come together now. The next colour we'll do the purity seal next. So the colour I'm going to use to base that's Rakarth Flesh, and then once we've finished the purity seal we'll do all the kind of the fleur-de-lis and all the iconography that's going to be white. The purity seal should be pretty straightforward to cover with the Rakarth White. Just be careful when you're coming towards the edges and other colours that have already been painted. Just work that Rakarth Flesh all over like this, and when it's dry just check. You may need to give it just another small coat in some places. We'll come back, we'll just give this a shade. Won't be any need to highlight it because we want that kind of old paper parchment feel to it. For shading this purity seal, just can use some Agrax Earth shade. Again, I'm not massively loading my brush, I'm just kind of working it over and just kind of, I guess, glazing the Agrax Earth shade a little so it pulls in the recesses, but it doesn't massively discolour the parchment. And there you can see you've got differentiation between the habit and the parchment in terms of the colour. So there we are. I'm going to get the next colour. We'll do all the white bits next, and we're getting towards the end. So I'm going to use Corax White as a base. I'll get that set up, come back, and we'll get to work. I find Corax White to be quite a thick paint, but even with a little bit of watering down it does cover really well. So what I'm doing now with this Corax White is just working it onto the wings and the kind of the eye on this shoulder. I don't want it on too thick, so if I do need to go back and do another coat I will. And then we've got other things. We've got the fleur-de-lis on the weapon, we've got the fleur-de-lis on the shoulder here. So again, as you've done all the other painting on this model, is take your time and make sure you don't get any Corax White on the bits you've already finished or based. So we got that, we got a fleur-de-lis on the back here. And I'm also going to paint this little screen, which I'm not sure what it's for, but in my eyes this is the power button, so we want that white as well. So I'm going to paint the rest of that fleur-de-lis, the other side of that, and we'll come back, we'll shade it, and then we'll highlight it. Shading the white is really straightforward. So you can use some Apothecary White contrast paint. Don't want too much on your brush for this, but just paint it over all the areas that you've just kind of based with Corax White. Take your time not to get it onto, again, the bits you've already finished, because Apothecary White can stain a little bit. I'll leave that part there. Just work it on, let that dry, and then we'll come back and highlight it all. Let that Apothecary White dry, and then just take some white scar and you can highlight back up then. Taking your time, because you want to leave some of that Apothecary White in the shadows. Same here. Just let the brush catch the design of the model. So I'm going to carry on with that, and then we'll come back, and the last bit we need to do is just highlight up the silver armour, and then we're done. The first highlight we're going to use for the metallic is Rune Fang Steel, which is kind of like a middle silver colour. We're just going to work this along the kind of the edges, just to kind of brighten up some of the kind of bluey steel we've already got on there. So just work your way around. This is kind of the equivalent of the thick edge highlight. So just work this in. And what we'll do is we'll go in with a kind of thinner edge highlight once we're done. So for the shoulder pads here, nice and straightforward, we're just picking up that edge and pulling it round. Same across the top here and here. So just work your way all the way around the model, getting those bits that you want to be, or getting the silver parts of the armour done. And we'll come back and we'll have a look at our final highlight, which will be with chrome from Vallejo Model Air, and then this Sister of Battle from the Argent Shroud will be done. The last highlight colour we're going to use, like I said, is that chrome from Vallejo Model Air, and this is just going to be on the absolute highest points where light is going to catch the armour. So it's coming out, it's looking really good, nice and shiny. You can use this technique for painting the Grey Knights as well, just gives you that nice blue tint on the armour. So there we are, work your way around, don't go overboard. One of the things you can do is you can paint in the buttons of the habit. So I'm going to go around all the buttons just with a little bit of the chrome and just dab it on the buttons. This is purely optional. And I'm going to go away and paint the head as well. So we'll catch up on the turntable at the end, where this Sister of Battle from the Argent Shroud is complete. So there we have it. This Battle Sister for the Order of the Argent Shroud is now complete and ready to take the table. I really hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please leave a like and a comment down below. This will be the last Battle Sister video I do for a while, apart from my Celestine 3-part series that should be online soon. I really hope you've got enough information across the 4 order videos I've done to either come up with your own scheme or to do one of the minor orders. I really appreciate the time you take watching the video. I really appreciate the support everybody's given me. If you want to check out my recommended equipment list, you can do down in the description, and you can also get 20% off some of the new Battle Sister pre-orders and the stuff that's already been released from Goblin Gaming. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you next time.